I sat on my bed, staring at the ceiling fan, watching it spin in circles while my mind did the same. Some nights, it felt like my life was in slow motion, not terrible, not exciting, just flat. I'd scroll through social media, see people laughing, achieving, living fully, and wonder why, on days, felt like empty repetitions. Work screens, small routines that didn't fill the void. I convinced myself this was normal, that everyone felt it. But deep down, I knew something was off. The hidden truth is that life doesn't hand you meaning on a silver platter, and emptiness isn't laziness or failure. It's a signal, a quiet alarm from your mind and body telling you that something vital is missing. Most people ignore it, distracting themselves with noise, hoping the feeling will fade. I did it too for years. But here's the part no one tells you: that void is actually an invitation, a door that, once open, leads to something real, something alive, something that finally makes your efforts feel worth it. I realized the shift started with small things, moving my body when I didn't want to, reaching out when I felt isolated, looking inside instead of running from the silence. Each choice, though tiny, added up in ways I couldn't see at first. And slowly, the flatness began to crack, replaced by a sense of possibility I had thought was lost forever. If you're watching this and nodding, feeling that same hollow weight in your chest, I want you to know it's not your fault. The system, the expectations, the relentless comparisons, they set us up for this emptiness. But here's the shock: the power to change it has always been within you, even when you felt incapable, even when it seemed impossible. I started noticing something strange about the way I moved through my days, or more accurately, how I didn't move. I'd wake up, go through the motions, and feel like an observer in my own life. The walls of my apartment, the buzzing phone, the endless scroll, they all became background noise that somehow made the emptiness worse. And then it hit me. I was treating my life like a waiting room, expecting meaning to arrive instead of creating it. There's a powerful truth that most people miss. You can't wait for clarity or happiness to fall into your lap. You have to actively reach for it. I began experimenting with tiny shifts, forcing myself to move my body, even when I didn't feel like it, talking to people honestly instead of hiding behind small talk, paying attention to my thoughts rather than letting them run me. And each small act felt uncomfortable at first. I almost quit 100 times because change is messy, slow, and exhausting. But here's what changed everything. As I kept pushing, as I refused to settle for flatness, I started seeing patterns I'd ignored my entire life. The same moments that used to deepen my emptiness now became tools for growth. I realized my relationships, my habits, even the way I handled stress, all of it was either feeding the void or filling it, and the choice was mine. That's the moment I understood that mental health isn't just about avoiding pain. It's about designing your days in a way that builds energy, presence, and purpose. It's why moving your body, reaching out instead of isolating, and truly observing your thoughts isn't optional, it's essential. And the best part, you don't need a complete overhaul to start. Small, consistent actions compound faster than we think. And once you feel even a fraction of that momentum, the emptiness begins to recede on its own. I remember the first time I noticed the change wasn't just in my head, was in how people responded to me. I started showing up differently, even in small ways. I laughed more freely, listened more deeply, and stopped hiding behind that flat, empty version of myself. And the reactions were subtle but powerful, and reached out more. Strangers smiled more genuinely, and even my own reflection felt lighter. That's when I realized something incredible: the emptiness I had felt wasn't permanent. It was a signal, a guide pointing me toward better habits, deeper connections, and a life that actually mattered. It reminded me of people I'd seen rise above similar struggles, those who didn't have an easy path, but learning to treat each day as a building block rather than a burden. They didn't wait for a magical solution. They started small, persisted through discomfort, and let momentum grow. And that's exactly what I did. I embraced daily practices that many dismiss, moving my body when I felt drained, checking in with my mental health honestly, seeking connections instead of isolation. Every tiny step felt insignificant at first, but each one quietly reinforced the truth I was capable of more than I had been told. Here's the key realization: emptiness often masks untapped potential. It's the world's way of saying, you're ready for something greater. And once you stop resisting it, that void can become your most powerful teacher. I began to see patterns in myself, moments where I could either fall back into old habits or create small victories. Those victories added up. I started feeling alive again, not just distracted or occupied, but genuinely present. There was a moment when I realized the emptiness wasn't just about what I was doing, it was about what I was avoiding. I had been hiding from my own thoughts, from the truth of how I felt, and from the uncomfortable questions that could have led me forward. And that's the tricky part. The mind has a way of tricking you into thinking distraction equals progress. I had been busy, active, social even, yet the hollow feeling persisted. It wasn't life failing me, it was me failing to truly engage with it. So I started asking myself hard questions. Why did I feel so unfulfilled even when I had it all on paper? Why did I keep repeating the same patterns, the same habits, the same small regrets every day? The answers weren't easy, but they were enlightening. I noticed that every time I chose comfort over action, avoidance over reflection, I was feeding the emptiness. And every small courageous act, moving my body, speaking my truth, facing a fear, chipped away at it. Here's what's fascinating. Most people think transformation is a single dramatic event, but it's really a series of micro decisions. Each time I decided to show up for myself, even when it hurt, I proved to myself that I could be trusted, that I could create meaning instead of waiting for it. And slowly, those small decisions became habits. Habits became momentum, and momentum became a life that felt rich, even on ordinary days. I want you to imagine that for a second. Imagine waking up tomorrow and feeling a sense of presence, clarity, and energy that you thought was lost. Imagine your relationships deepening, your confidence growing, and your mind finally quieting instead of spinning. That's what's possible when you stop hiding from yourself and start taking ownership of your days, your choices, and your life. By the time I reached this point, the change wasn't subtle anymore, it was undeniable. The empty, flat feeling that had followed me like a shadow began to lift. I could move my body without dreading it, think my thoughts without judgment, and connect with people without fear. That void I once feared had transformed into clarity, energy, and even excitement for life. And the lesson I want you to take away is simple. This is proof it's possible. I know what you might be thinking, it sounds too good to be true. But it's not about luck or an overnight miracle. It's about consistent, intentional action. The small, sometimes uncomfortable choices, moving your body, reflecting on your mental health, strengthening your relationships, they build on each other, quietly and visibly, until one day you realize and the emptiness that once felt permanent is now nothing more than a memory. If you want to see how this principle applies even further, the next step is understanding the surprising science behind high-value habits. How our brains respond to small actions, how psychology shapes our routines, and how habits can either trap us or set us free. That's why I recommend checking out the surprising science behind high-value habits next. It will take what you've learned here and give you tools to amplify in your daily life. Remember, the power to stop feeling empty was inside you all along. You just had to start, act, and trust yourself. Each step you take compounds. Each decision builds momentum. And every moment you hesitate is a moment you could be turning emptiness into purpose. Because once you embrace these small shifts, you'll realize something profound. Life isn't about waiting for meaning, it's about creating it, step by step, and proving to yourself that fulfillment is not only possible, it's inevitable. We are Wisdom Recorder, your knowledge source. Subscribe and like for more.